Today I want to explore the question, does quality even matter? I know, controversial. And depending on how this goes, I may want to consider making this into a regular series. But for today, I want to make two versions of the same drink, one using cheap ingredients and one using expensive ingredients. And in the end, I'm going to set these up. I'm going to give my brother and cameraman a blind taste test and help me decide, does quality really matter? Can you really detect what a quality cocktail is versus a cheap cocktail? And I know this is a very limited sample size, but it's something to try and compare, so we'll see. In my opinion, the more expensive cocktail should really shine through, but it could be a curveball. And on that note, if you're new to the channel and you enjoy this kind of content, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the bell to be notified of upcoming videos. And without further ado, let's get to it. All right, so I want to start things off with a Manhattan. Classic, simple, and yet very sophisticated. I also like this drink because there's no fillers such as egg white or juice, just two drinks that I can easily compare. Starting with the cheap drink, in this case I'm using some $10 Kessler whiskey I picked up and pouring in 2 ounces. Additionally, I have this bottle of sweet vermouth that runs me about $8 and I'll be pouring in 1 ounce. Lastly, I'm using 2 dashes of Angostura bitters, and I got this bottle for about 10 bucks. All right, it's time to add ice to the mixing glass, and I'm gonna be stirring for about 20 to 30 seconds. All in, I spent $30 on ingredients, and this should yield me about 13 cocktails, coming into about $2.30 for the cocktail. Not bad, hopefully it tastes good. And lastly, I'm topping the drink off with some Walmart maraschino cherries I got for $2. Setting this aside, now it's time to make the Manhattan using my most expensive ingredients. I'm using this $210 bottle of Yamato whiskey and pouring in 2 ounces. Next, I'm using this $40 bottle of Antica Formula sweet vermouth and pouring in 1 ounce. Next, I'm putting in 2 dashes of Hella Bitters, which runs me about $20. All right, it's time to add ice to the mixing glass, and I'm gonna be stirring for about 20 to 30 seconds. All in, I spent $300 on ingredients, and this should yield me about 13 cocktails, coming to $23.07 for the cocktail. That's nearly 10 times the cost, and this one cocktail would run you the cost for all the cheap ingredients combined. That's crazy. And lastly, I'm topping the cocktail off with a Luxardo cherry, which runs me about $30 a jar. All right, it's time for the moment of truth. I have my brother here, also the cameraman, who has had his fair share of reasonable cocktails, and I would say has a good palate. Let's see if he can tell which cocktail has the expensive ingredients versus the one with the cheap ingredients. This is 100% a blind taste, and he has no idea which one's which.
Okay, let her rip. I like to think that's very well balanced. It's very sophisticated, like you like to say. This is a classy style drink. It's got a nice little spice to it. Solid drink overall.
What would you give it? Rate it 1 out of 10.
With the alcohol coming through on that, kind of you can taste it. That's usually a solid 6 to 7.
Okay, next up.
It's a very sophisticated taste. This one was very smooth. I enjoyed it. But I hate to say, I honestly rate this one a little less. I would like to say maybe like a 5. For some reason, this one has more of a kind of a spicy taste to it. This one's more of a subtle taste. And I feel like when I'm having a Manhattan, I want it to have that spice to it. It just kind of just brings out the flavors. So overall, I'm gonna give this one a 5, and I'll give this one a solid 6 to 7.
All right, so moment of truth. This one is actually the one with the cheap ingredients, and this one is the one with the more expensive ingredients.
No kidding, no kidding.
So I'm actually really curious to see what the difference is as well. So I'm gonna try the cheap one. I see what he means by that spice. I can tell it's the cheaper vermouth. I've also had a lot of vermouth. So I can really tell the difference between the cheap vermouth and the excellent vermouth. But undeniably, like, the whiskey is smooth. So for a $10 whiskey, I'm actually shocked that it's a smooth whiskey. Going into the more expensive one, which I'm very excited about. That sweet vermouth really does pop. I mean, there is a undeniable difference between the sweet vermouth and the cheap vermouth. With that said, the bitters may not have poured as much in here. I thought I had more bitter being pronounced in the drink, but I'm not really getting a lot of that spice that I was kind of expecting. Overall, the whiskey is very balanced, but I can tell there's more whiskey pronounced in the cheaper drink. But regardless, you know, this is just our opinions and this is just the 2 ingredients we used. I would never use $200 whiskey to make a Manhattan. It was a fun experiment, but it really, in our case, is showing you that in most cases, especially for this drink, that maybe a quality ingredient matters, but in this case, we really couldn't tell a solid difference between, you know, a $23 cocktail versus a $2 cocktail at home. Regardless, it's kind of a fun experiment. In the comments, what drinks should we try doing this with next? I have a lot of ingredients, I have a lot of things to use, and I could always buy more, but I wanna know which cocktail I should try making next and compare the cheap versus the expensive. And if you enjoy this kind of content, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and the bell to be notified. I put out new videos and shorts each week, and the support means a ton. But until next time,